right, good afternoon. How's everybody feeling today? I want to give a special welcome to my neighbor, Carol Kane, who's come here for the first time with her two young sons. Good afternoon, Carol. Let's give her a greeting. We love you, we bless you, we appreciate you, and we thank God for you. All right, today I want to talk about something that has been making headlines and has been pretty controversial in the media over the last couple of days. Some of you may have seen it and some of you may have not. It is called Race Together. Who has seen it? All right, and read it, checked it out, know what it's talking about? Well, for those of you who have not taken the time to read it and understand what it's all about, it is an effort that was put together by Starbucks CEO and the president of USA Today. And I quote what they say on the very beginning of this: racial diversity is the story of America, our triumphs as well as our faults. Yet, racial inequality is not a topic we readily discuss. It's time to start. I can't say that I could agree any more than it's time to start this discussion, to continue this discussion, to evolve this discussion. And that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to talk to you about what's in here and what we can do individually to be a part of this discussion. First of all, I want to ask you a question. Just try to clear your mind. I know we're already in the context of this conversation, but what do you think of when you hear the word race? First thing that pops to your mind. We're all coming from a different place. We're all standing someplace that has been put together by our background and our culture, and we come up with a meaning for that. Now, before I get into what some of those might be, I went ahead on and I just put the word race in Google. I Googled it. Interesting enough, of the 13 entries that popped up on that first page, half of them talked about race in the social context. Half of them talked about race being a human classification, a group of people who share similar and distinct physical characteristics. Now, Wikipedia says it was first referred to as speakers of a common language, and then to denote national affiliations. But by the 17th century, race began to refer to physical traits. And we know what happened after that. So, is your first thought the social context? Or is your first thought race as in speed? Or is your first thought, race way? Where are you inclined for that thought to bring you? And that tells you a lot about where your consciousness and your subconsciousness is in relationship to this one word. For some of us, it brings up some emotions, some rather negative emotions. For some of us, it brings up some anxieties, it brings up some pains from the past. Others people that may look at it as a word that is just a bothersome subject. Why do we need to talk about it? Why are we worried about this? Why are people making such a big deal out of race? My first thought is, why do we notice the differences and not the similarities? Why do we look at our brother and look at what our brother looks like and not who our brother is? Why do we look at our sister and see our sister in what she's wearing or what she's doing instead of who she is? Why are we so caught up in the differences and not the similarities? In this paper, they have 3 maps in here. And if you haven't seen them, I'll try to open it up for you shortly. But they've got these 3 maps. And the headline of these 3 maps say, what is the chance that the next person you meet will be different from you? Well, in 1960, there was a 20% chance that the person you met would be different from you. But now that's all contingent upon where you live. Because if you lived along the eastern seaboard in the south and into Texas, that would probably be the case. But if you lived in the Midwest going up onto the Northwest, your chances were 0. You were not likely to meet anybody that was different than you. The next map of the 3 was actually 2010. You had a 55% chance of meeting someone different than you. That's only 5 years ago. Now, you look at that map, and still there's that cluster right there in the middle and on up to the Northwest, that percentage is seriously lower than that. And even in Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire. So what these maps are really giving you is some demographics. But it goes on into the third map, and there's a 71% chance that in this country, you are likely to meet on any given day someone that is different than you are. Folks, we are changing. The face of this country is changing. Our neighbors are changing. The people we work with are changing. The people we go to school with are changing. There is a constant change coming along. Why aren't we changing with it? And that's what I want to talk to you about today, is changing with the face of America. Changing our mind, changing our heart, changing the way we see one another. So when did you first become aware of race? They had 5 people that they talked to in this paper about race. And of the 5 people, they all had a story that wasn't too dissimilar to my own, recognizing that there was something different about some other people right when I was about 5 or 6 years old, maybe when I first went to school. Noticing that, okay, Jenny's hair is straight and mine is not. But in the context of a child, when you first see that, it's not bad or good. We don't judge it. We just notice that it is, and it's okay. Jenny smiles at me and we play, and I smile at Jenny and we play, and it's all right. But somewhere along the line, that difference becomes associated with a judgment. That difference becomes associated with somebody's better than somebody else. That difference becomes associated with somebody is good and somebody is not so good. But it's right around in that time frame that we make this distinction. And I think the children of today, that distinction is changing. Because as I said, the map of America, the map of our country is changing. There was one Caucasian that was interviewed in that number of 5s. And when he was asked, when did he first understand race, he said it's been so long ago, he doesn't remember. Now, what I find interesting about that, not looking at it in a negative light, is that he came from a certain culture that has always been this way. And so it doesn't become a conscious way of thinking, it becomes an underlying way of life, a subconscious way of thinking. And that I denote right to people's intentions. So you've got to look at the subconscious mind and what's been planted there and their intentions going forward. But we have a way to change that, and I'm going to get to that shortly. Okay, along with that, the next part of it was where they had drafted a memo. They drafted this memo from a hypothetical associate named Thomas Meyer. So Thomas Meyer, hypothetically, drafted this memo with a great number of errors in it, intentionally, okay? They sent it out to 60 different law firms, the exact same letter, and to 30 of them, they said Thomas was Caucasian. And the other 30, they said Thomas is African American. And they asked for feedback. I know that most of you in the room can already imagine what the feedback is, and I'm going to tell you the truth, you're not far off. From the half that thought he was Caucasian, on a scale of 1 to 5, how did he do? Oh, 4.1. On the half that thought that he was African American, how did he do? 3.2. Those that thought he was a Caucasian, how many errors? 10.2. Those that thought he was African American, 14.6. Of those that gave comments that thought he was an African American, they said, oh, Thomas has potential. Thomas has good analytical skills. Thomas is generally a good writer, but those that thought he was African American said, Thomas needs a lot of work. I can't believe Thomas went to NYU. He's average at best. Now, it's amazing how the same letter to the same type of people got such a different comment. So what would they have said had they not known anything out other than Thomas's name? Probably somewhere in between or the Caucasian. But we don't know. And when you walk into a situation, you will never know because you are who you are. But I can tell you what you can do about that. You want to know? Yeah. All right, we're getting there. First, I want to give you some facts, because some of these facts, well, I'm going to give you some statements, and you tell me if they're true or false, if they're fact or fiction, all right? And that's also in this paper. So if you think it's a fact, if you think it's true, after I say it, just raise your hand. Let me know what you think. I'm going to keep on moving. Just raise your hand, participate. The first one, most people that identify themselves as African Americans in the United States have some European ancestry in them. Okay? A study finds that many people who identify themselves as completely white also have some African ancestry in them. Thank you, Ryan. Asians recently surpassed Latinos as the fastest growing group of new immigrants to the United States. Almost 10% of blacks are new immigrants from Africa or Caribbean countries, especially Haiti, the Dominican Republic, and Jamaica. 90% of the nation's wealth is controlled by white people. From 2002 to 2007, the number of black-owned businesses jumped by more than 60%, and the number of Latino-owned businesses jumped by more than 40%. 67% of black children live in single-parent homes. More white children than black children live in single-parent homes. And last but not least, over the past 20 years, the rates at which blacks both commit and are victims of homicide have shown sharper declines than those of whites. These are all true. Every single last one of them. Who knew? But they are. Now, there was a time when it wasn't about race. There was a time when people weren't traveling to different countries, to different regions. And during those times, they didn't have race to fight about. But what did they fight about then? Religion. There has always been something to fight about. There's always been something that someone has that they want to find that's different from someone else to make themselves feel better and have more power and be in more control. Always looking for the difference. So when we relate our differences, when we look for the difference, we're going to find them. So you have to ask, is there really a better majority? Does race really matter? That's the big question. Does race really matter? Is it true? Or is it the truth? There's a big difference there between is it true and is it the truth? Because it may be true in the mind of some, but the truth is we are all expressions of God. In Genesis 1:26, it reads, "Then God said, 'Let us make human beings in our image to be like us.' They will reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, the livestock, all the wild animals on the earth, and the small animals that scurry along the ground. That's the end of the scripture. It didn't say, let us make humans in our image so that they may have dominion over other humans. But let us make humans in our own image to be like us. Our founding minister, Minister Jehudi, is always saying we are made in the image and likeness of God. We are all made in the image and likeness of God. We are all unique, individual expressions of God. When we get to know another person, we get to know another unique expression of God. Did you hear? You get to know another expression of God. So, with over 7 billion people in the world, with over 7 billion individual, unique expressions of God, why are you limiting yourself? Why should we only choose to get to know the expressions of God that look like us? Why should we choose to get to know the expressions of God that act like us? Why should we choose to only get to know the expressions of God that agree with us? We learn aspects of God from everyone we meet. God is uniquely expressed in every individual. God is speaking to us from every individual that we meet. Why are we going to turn some of that conversation away? God is always trying to tell us something. Don't pick who to get the message from because you might miss the best message. God is trying to tell you something from your brother. God is trying to tell you something from your sister. Don't turn deaf ear because you don't like what they look like. Don't turn a deaf ear because you don't like what you think they have to say or what they represent. We live in a country that values this individual expression. We live in a country that values our freedom. And in Galatians 5:13, it reads, "For you have been called to live in freedom." My brothers and sisters, but don't use freedom to satisfy your sinful nature. Instead, use your freedom to serve one another in love. Not serving one another in fear, hate, dislike, diskindness. Serve one another in love. We talked about breath. Minister Server stood up here just a minute ago and talked about breath. With each and every breath, we recreate ourselves. You don't have to be the way that you always have been. Why not recreate yourself in this breath as someone that looks for the God in everyone you see? Why not recreate yourself in this breath to be someone that's looking at being a part of the healing that this country needs? Every cell in your body is recreating itself all the time. A year from now, there is not a cell in you that's here at this moment. They have all recreated. And they do it naturally. If they didn't, we would die. But we fail to recreate ourselves in the moment. Why? Because we block ourselves by doing the reverse of what a healthy cell does automatically. We believe our reality is created outside of ourselves. We have this notion that somebody else is in control of what we see in our world. It's not true. You are the key to your own life. You are the key to your own destiny. You are the key to your own vision. We believe that if we look outside of ourselves, we'll find some truth, but the truth is already within you. We avoid the unknown because we fear what it might bring. And that's the biggest key to meeting someone that's different than you. We fear them because they are the unknown. We fear them, especially if they look different. They have a different life. They have a different culture. It's amazing what you will project on other people. You know, just because they don't look like you, oh, they must eat different food. You know, they, keep their house differently. They talk differently. They act differently. We want to always put this whole difference, but you would be amazed at the similarities. You would be amazed at how alike we all are. With every moment is born the act of recreation. Every moment. Let's recreate right now. Take a deep breath in. Release. You release the past, that past way of thinking, being, and doing. And you recreate moving into another way of expressing. Every moment you have an opportunity to do that. With each breath, we create our present experience from moment to moment. Getting reconnected with God within is the key to manifest the oneness in the physical reality that already exists in the spiritual. When you approach each moment with fresh eyes and an open heart, you are no longer defined by your past pain or your future fears. Keith got it. Let me say it one more time. When you approach each moment with fresh eyes and an open heart, you are no longer defined by past pain or future fears. It's up to you. In this month that represents the spiritual faculty of strength, we all know that it takes great strength and courage to move into living outside of that self-imposed box. There's really no box, but we put it there. So here's a question I want you to ask yourself, and feel inclined to go to the Race Together website and add your comment. What is America's greatest challenge? Are you a part of the healing, or are you a part of the pain? Jesus, our master teacher and way shower, our brother, was a carpenter, a simple carpenter. But yet, when he started his journey, when he started his walk, he pulled people from all walks of life. They didn't look like him. They didn't act like him. They didn't think like him, and they didn't do what he did. He pulled them from everywhere. And it wasn't just the 12 apostles that were his followers. Women followed him. He had prostitutes following him. He had all walks of sinners following him. But Jesus saw the God in each and every one of them. He didn't see the outside shell that was only a temporary manifestation of the thoughts that they had yesterday. He saw them for what they represented in that breath, that they recreated who they are right here and right now. And with each and every breath, they continued to recreate themselves as he took them along this journey with him. Are you ready to walk on that journey with Jesus? To truly look at the people that you see along your path for the God within them? Jesus taught us to love one another. Not to just love those that look like us. Not to just love those who agreed with us, and not to just love those who worship like us. In this race together, let us come together in our true purpose for being on the planet, which is our first commandment, to love the Lord thy God with all your heart and all your mind. God lives within each and every one of us. To fulfill this commandment, you must truly come to love God in every expression, no matter what that expression looks like.